Time. Thank you all for being here today for this meeting of the Interior Subcommittee of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman of the full committee. Chairman Chaffetz has joined us today, as well as our ranking member, Ms. Lawrence, and we will have others join us. We're here this afternoon to discuss barriers to the recovery of endangered species and hopefully how we can break those barriers down. The Endangered Species Act was signed into law by President Nixon in 1973. Its primary goal was to prevent the extinction of imperiled plant and animal life and to recover those populations by removing or lessening threats to their survival. Species are considered for listing primarily through a petition process. Anyone can file a petition, and the Fish and Wildlife Service has 90 days to respond. If the service determines there's merit to the petition, they have 1 year to either list the species, determine it is not warranted to list the species, or that listing is but precluded by other priorities. According to the Fish and Wildlife Service website, there were 2,258 plant and animal species on the threatened or endangered species lists. According to the service's delisting report, 63 species have been removed from the endangered species list. 34 have been recovered, 10 have gone extinct, and 19 species were listed in error. That's not a great track record. Some will argue that simply spending more money will fix the problem. But even former Clinton and Obama administration Deputy Interior Secretary David Hayes stated to the Environmental Law and Policy Annual Review in 2013 that this has been fish-in-the-barrel litigation for folks who, because there's a deadline, and we miss these deadlines, and so we've been spending a huge amount of, in my mind, relatively unproductive time fending off lawsuits in this arena. End quote. There seems to be bipartisan consensus that changes need to be made to improve the law, which has been under siege by litigation. ESA decisions are increasingly driven by litigation, the threat of litigation, closed-door settlements, and in some cases, the whims of federal judges. Serial litigants flood the agency with petitions, and when the Fish and Wildlife Service predictably fails to meet rigid statutory timelines, they sue. The service eventually settles in court to set priorities behind closed doors with the serial litigants, and the process repeats. Such litigation does little more than benefit lawyers and diverts time and resources away from species conservation. What is needed is boots on the ground instead of briefcases in the courtroom. Flexibility for the service needs to be accompanied by an increased emphasis on species recovery planning, as well as increased utilization of state and local stakeholders for data collection, habitat conservation, and the grunt work of protecting and ultimately recovering a species. The Gunnison sage grouse, the lesser prairie chicken, dune sagebrush lizard show that states and locals have the expertise, resources, and will to lead on species conservation. Today, I hope to hear from our panel on how to better harness these voluntary conservation initiatives that I believe are critical to actually recovering species, and when we can, keep them off the list in the first place. Our witnesses today will talk about their efforts on candidate conservation agreements, on habitat conservation plans, and on efforts to overcome serial litigation. I welcome your input and hope we can have a productive discussion on how to improve the success rate of species recovery and delisting. Thank you. I now recognize Ms. Lawrence, the ranking member of the Subcommittee on the Interior, for her opening statement.